You open Claude AI on a Tuesday morning because your biggest competitor just launched a product against yours, and the C-suite wants a full campaign response on their desk by 9 a.m. the next day. Positioning, sample copy, multi-channel strategy, a deck, the whole thing. Before I built this setup, that was a 10-hour night. I'd eat dinner at my desk, I'd be building the deck at 1 a.m. wondering if my copy was landing or if I was just too tired to tell. This time, I had the whole thing done in about 90 minutes. Now, I know how that sounds, so let me tell you what this video is not. This is not another video about building an AI marketing team with agents and Claude code and API keys and terminal commands. I've watched those, and the people making them have mostly never shipped a real marketing campaign in their life. Their so-called marketing team is actually 5 AI agents and a landing page builder. That's not marketing, that's just a tech demo. Now I'm going to show you what this looks like inside a real marketing job. No code, no agents, no Claude skills you have to install. It's simply one folder with 8 files and one thing almost everybody sets up wrong, which is exactly why your Claude output has probably been underwhelming so far. Now, I've got nearly 20 years at a Fortune 500 as a marketing operator, so let me walk you through it. Here's what Tuesday looks like when this is set up correctly. The competitor press release hits at about 10 o'clock in the morning. Then the ask lands on your desk right after lunch. And all you have to do is open one folder, you write one prompt, and about 15 minutes later, you've got a draft that sounds like your company actually wrote it, and an hour back and forth, bam, you're done. You've got copy, positioning, strategy, the deck, and you could close your laptop at a reasonable time. You get to eat dinner, and then you get to walk into that 9 a.m. morning with a defensible point of view, and you spend that meeting debating the strategy and not apologizing for your draft. And that's the Tuesday most marketers haven't had yet. And look, I see what's happening with a lot of experienced marketers right now. You tried Claude AI, you gave it a brief or a positioning prompt, maybe a draft, and the output came back generic. It sounded like every other big company on the internet. Well, you rewrote most of it, tried it again, then rewrote most of it again. And somewhere around that third time, you quietly decided this tool's not for real marketing just yet. Meanwhile, there's some 22-year-old on LinkedIn posting how they 10x their marketing output with AI, while you're sitting there thinking either you missed something or this whole thing might just be marketing theater. Well, you're not missing the prompt trick. You're not missing the agent stack. You're missing one specific setup move. And the longer you go without it, the further behind you get in the shift that's actually happening, whether you're ready for it or not. Here's why I want to have this conversation right now. The real edge of marketing isn't replacing your experience with AI, it's actually running your AI experience. Every week there's a new tool, a new release, a new thing you're supposed to learn. The coding guys are building agent stacks that most mid to senior marketers don't actually need. The hype guys are selling you fantasies, and nobody's talking to the person with years of experience and real judgment who's just trying to figure out where to start in all this AI madness. So here's what I'm gonna walk you through: the exact Claude AI project folder and the 8 files that I use. And the one file almost everybody skips that's quietly doing the heaviest work. And I'll give you the sister prompt that separates people getting slop from the people getting work they can actually ship. And the thing most marketers are missing is in chapter 2, so stay with me. All right, let me get you back to the Tuesday. The competitor press release dropped at 10 a.m. Now, it's a directly competitive product and it's launching sooner than your Intel said it would. The reaction goes from like this: C-suite first, VPs next, and then somebody like me gets the actual ask. And it goes, put together a full multi-channel response plan by the morning. And they want sample copy across email, paid ads, and organic. They want a strategic narrative for leadership that explains why our response doesn't look reactive, even though it actually is. And they want a full deck with slides, charts, supporting data, everything. Before this Claude setup, that was about 10 hours of work, and the writing wasn't even the hardest part. The writing was actually maybe a third. The hard part is actually the research and pulling all the competitive context, pulling all our historical positioning, and pulling the language from past campaigns that actually worked. Then you have to make the story hold and then build the deck, the charts, the data, and all the slides, typically at 1 a.m. while second guessing whether the whole narrative even lands to begin with. And this is how marketers, my friend, actually burn out. And the first time I tried to use Claude AI to build this, one of those nights, it really didn't work out. I had the pressure, I had the press release, I pasted everything into a prompt, the competitor announcement, then a rough brief, a couple of old campaign docs, and I asked for a response strategy. What came back was fine, technically coherent, structured, but it sounded like any vanilla enterprise company on the internet. I mean, generic value props, stale language. Nothing about it sounded like us, our brand, our voice, our identity. So I had to rewrite most of it. I delivered the brief a little late and closed laptop that night thinking, yeah, this Claude AI tool isn't ready. But the tool was ready, my setup wasn't. What I figured out over the next few weeks is something I've never seen explained properly on YouTube. Let me show you the folder. So this is the project. One workspace inside Claude, 8 files on the right, a sister prop up top, and an empty chat window. That's the entire setup. Nothing about this show you requires code, nothing requires an agent, nothing requires you to install anything. If you can drag and drop a file, you can build this. First block, who we sell to, enterprise profiles, mid-market profiles, persona definitions. Together, these tell Claude who the buyer is, not the signature makers. Actual segmentation, real company sizes, real roles, and what those roles actually care about. What language lands with them. Most people tend to hand Claude a one-page buyer persona and just move on. Because if Claude doesn't know who the output's for, everything drifts towards whoever Claude thinks you're writing for, which means it's writing for nobody in particular. File 4 is the brand voice and tone. Now this one's heavy. This is not our brand voice is confident, clear, and human. That paragraph is useless. Claude Reason still writes every AI model writes by default. This is example sentences, rewrite showing what drifts off brand and what stays on brand. The words we use, and more importantly, the words we don't use. The register, how formal, how casual, how direct. Now, the more examples you can feed it, the better. And the what not to sound like, honestly, is more valuable than what to actually sound like. File 5 are the messaging pillars. And I want to stop at this one because this is the file almost everybody skips and it's very easy to overlook. Now, it doesn't sound like much, but it's quietly doing the most work in the whole folder. Messenger pillars are the 3 or 4 strategic narratives your company is always reinforcing, campaign after campaign. These themes and the proof points, the angles you own in the market, and also any angles you stay away from. Without this file, Claude writes technically correct marketing copy that could come from anybody. Once I added this, the output from Claude started to sound more like the material my team already writes. It started sounding more consistent, more on narrative, and stayed in the lane our company actually operates in. And that's the unlock. It's not a prompt trick. It's giving Claude the same reference stock you would give a new marketing hire on their first day. And if you ever looked at Claude's output and thought, this is pretty good, but it doesn't really sound like us, I bet money your setup doesn't have this file. Go check, I'll wait. File 6 is the positioning statement. This is the shortest but most concentrated version of how we talk about ourselves. The category differentiator. The value prop for our top segments. Without it, Claude invents a position statement on the fly, and it's almost right, which is worse than almost wrong. Now, file 7. This one is the one nobody else on YouTube is showing you. Historical campaign data. This is a summary of every real campaign my team has shipped. Briefs, headlines, subject lines, copy blocks, postmortems. What worked and what didn't work. Not polished case studies, the actual working documents from campaigns we actually ran. This is a file that turns Claude from a smart assistant into the marketer who's been on my team for years. When I ask Claude to write a response to the competitor, it doesn't just know my audience and my voice, it knows the last 4 years of campaigns we actually ran and what angles we've used and what didn't work last time, which subject lines outperformed, which headlines fell flat. You can't get that from a single style guide, and you can't get it from the positioning doc. You only get it by feeding Claude the actual output history of the team you want it to sound like. Last file, the campaign brief template. This is the skeleton every brief I write sits inside. It has the sections, the order, the question each section has to answer. So when I tell Claude, write me a brief, it doesn't guess the format. It actually uses this. This also is why the deck comes out together fast. The brief template maps cleanly to the slides leadership actually expects. So Claude builds the brief, then it builds the deck off of those same bones. On top of the 8 files, there's the system prompt. It starts like this. You're a senior marketing strategist embedded in marketing operations function of a Fortune 500 enterprise. Then it gets specific. The role, the audience, the tone, and the guardrails. This file gives Claude knowledge. The system prompt gives it an identity. Most people skip this entirely, which is like hiring a strategist and handing them your brand guidelines, but never telling them what their actual job is. So that's the whole Claude AI project folder with 8 files and 1 system prompt. Should take you about 2 hours to set up the first version, and most of the content already exists somewhere in your work. You just haven't pulled it all into one place just yet. Now, real quick, if the messaging pillars beat hit, drop a comment and tell me which file you think you're missing. I read the comments and it tells me what to make next. Now back to Tuesday. The competitor release. The VP pings me after lunch. I open the project on Claude. I drop the press release straight into the chat. I write 1 prompt, something like, our competitor just launched this, read it. Using my audience profiles, pillars, positioning, and the most historical campaigns, draft our multi-channel response brief with positioning, sample copy across emails, paid and organic, and also write a strategic narrative for leadership. Then magically about 15-20 minutes later, I have a first draft. And I need to be honest about what that draft is and what it isn't. It's not finished work. It's a strong first draft. The positioning is right. The narrative's the kind of story we can actually tell. The copy is in our voice. The references are pulled from the past campaigns that worked. So it's 90% of the way there in the first pass. Then about an hour or so iteration, me reading, me pushing back, giving Claude commands like, sharpen this pillar. The second email subject line is weak. Give me 3 variants. Rewrite the leadership opener to lead with strategy, not tactics. Claude then iterates fast in my voice using my context. Then the last move, I ask Claude to build the deck and it generates the PowerPoint. So we've got about 90 or so minutes from start to finish, and I'm ready to walk into that 9 a.m. meeting with what used to take me about 10 hours of work to put together. We've now just shrunken it down to about 90 minutes. And here's the thing that actually changed for me. It wasn't the time savings. Now those were real. It was that I stopped walking into that 9 a.m. apologizing. I used to sit in those reviews quietly defensive, knowing that I had to cut corners because the timeline to deliver the brief at that meeting was absurd. And I would know that some slides didn't quite hold up. I knew the copy wasn't quite there because I didn't have time to fully get it right and dial it in. Now I walk in and my work is actually defensible. I spend the meeting talking more about strategy than about the messaging and the pillars. And that's really the whole change. You stop being the marketer producing output under pressure and you start being the one in the room with the actual point of view because the output is already done. Now I have to be honest about what this doesn't do, because the replace your whole marketing team framing on YouTube is going to get a whole lot of people in trouble. Now, the whole Claude AI replace my entire marketing team title thing, it reflects the actual change I've seen in my output. But I'd be lying to you if I didn't tell you, it's also a little bit of trick framing. What Claude replaced was the production, the writing, the drafting, the deck building, the research stitching, the 2 a.m. work that used to eat my nights. What Claude did not replace is the judgment. It did not replace the call, which tactics to lead with. It did not replace the relationship I had with the sales leader who needed to know this brief was coming. It did not replace the read I have on how my C-suite prefers ideas be presented to them. Years of watching them react and knowing which narrative they'll buy and which ones they'll push back on. None of that's in this folder. That's all me. And that's the experience part. That's the part that AI YouTube content creators keep pretending you can automate. and you just can't. What Claude AI replaced is the part of my job that was actually making me worse at my job. Production overload, the all-nighters, the moments I was too tired to see the actual strategic layer because I was knee-deep in trying to format PowerPoint slides. Claude AI didn't really replace my team. Claude replaced the stress that kept me from being the best version of myself. Now, some of you watching this are knee-deep in competitor file drills this quarter, and you're still doing the same 10-hour way, walking into those 9 a.m. mornings tired and hoping the deck holds together, hoping nobody calls you out about the copy on slide 6. And what I'm describing isn't a productivity hack. It's the room you walk into when the production isn't burning your nights anymore. It's the version of you that still got something left to bring into that strategy meeting. One question: what was the last fire drill you pulled an all-nighter for that could have been done in 90 minutes if you had the right setup in Claude AI? Drop a comment. I read them. So the Tuesday competitor launch, C-suite on fire, 10-hour a night, that can be reduced down to 90 minutes. The folder is what made that possible. 8 files, 1 system prompt, and about 2 hours of real setup. So if you've been doing this work for a while, you already have most of the raw materials. And if you got value from this, then hit that subscribe button. I'm building this channel out for mid to senior career marketers who want AI to amplify their experience, not replace them. So no coding tutorials, no agent stack theater. These are real workflows for someone who actually does this. Every other video on YouTube right now is telling you to build and code some complex agent stack. I'm telling you how to build one folder.